What's up, Coach?
Happy Friday, Michael.
Happy Friday. We got a good one today, man.
Yes, we are having our very first professional triathlete guest, and I honestly can't think of a better one to start with.
Yeah, and especially because he's been a longtime fan of the podcast.
Long-time lawn mowing podcast favorite.
He's been, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, he really goes into some good stuff, man. It's really cool to hear his perspective on racing Louisville, racing Wisconsin, what can be done to improve the sport and get more people involved and stuff. And it was just real chill and cool conversation, man. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, God, I loved it. I mean, I think one of the more underrated aspects of so many of these professionals is, people just look at raw talent and see ability. And what they don't understand or even think sometimes is just how cerebral and how detailed these athletes should be, and some are. And he is definitely one of them. And I'm sure some of that just comes from his personality and his background as an engineer, but the amount of detail and the time that he puts into just the smallest things, I thought was fascinating, and something that every athlete, regardless of the level, can take and apply to themselves.
Yeah, I agree. He was just detailed and very cool. So everybody, kick back, and we're gonna have our first professional triathlete on here, and his name is Andrew Starykowicz. Andrew, welcome to the Crushing Iron podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And I understand that you've been a listener for a little while.
Yeah, I'm actually, I know more about you than you may know about me. Actually, you probably know it's about equal right now, because I'm sure the Google helps you learn about me. Yeah. But no, whenever I push mow the yard, I discovered you guys about, I'd say early, I discovered you guys at the end of last winter, early spring, when I was pretty much on my hiatus from being injured. And during that time, I was just checking out, listening to different podcasts, seeing what's new out there. And I ended up listening the whole summer to you guys when I push mowed the yard. So it takes me about 35, 40 minutes to push mow the yard. And then with all the rolling up hoses, picking up kids' toys and everything, it ends up being in about an hour, which is about how long your guys' podcasts are. That's right.
Do you get, does that include stretching, or do you loosen up for the yard?
Usually I'm doing it. I probably creep out my neighbors. Usually it's right after a bike workout or a run workout. So I'm usually doing it in my cycling kit or in my run clothes still.
Now, see, I constitute that as a brick. I call those bricks, the lawnmower brick. I don't know if you...
Yeah, actually, there was one time I actually recorded it on a Polar, and, the back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And I actually got, I think, 1.2 miles, including the whole entire rolling up hoses, picking up kids' toys. Everything was 1.2 miles. So.
Wow. And if you had kept your aero helmet on, you probably could have shaved off 1:30 or 1:45.
Oh, no, probably not. I don't run with the push mower, because there's a point at which wearing a aero helmet is detrimental aerodynamically, depending on, or not aerodynamically, but the extra weight that most of the aero helmets weigh compared to some of the lightweight road helmets. If you're one of the slower cyclists, sometimes it's actually better to have a lightweight road helmet than an aero helmet.
Is that
most
right?
People don't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
There's a point of diminishing returns, where
what is that
difference
point
in weight. I've never really gone too far into depth on that one, because that speed is far less than what I travel at. But
right.
If you watch some of the, a few years ago when they had the mountain climbing time trial and the tour, none of them wore aero helmets,
right?
Because a lot of them went with stuff like an aero road helmet. Just because you get that diminishing return of aerodynamics versus your weight.
Wow. Oh, it's versus the weight.
You think it was weight and ventilation, or is it really just weight?
I mean, for me and for them, it's weight. I mean, ventilation. Gotcha. When you go quick, there's plenty of ventilation.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. So how many podcasts did you go through, or did you veto, or do you still continue to listen to?
I don't really listen to too many podcasts. I mean, I listened to the Real Starkies for a while. But
you almost have to. You have a long history with him, right?
When somebody abuses your name, you kind of have to stay abroad or abreast of what's going on there.
Yeah.
Is it true you didn't know what was going on there?
I had no freaking clue. I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny as can be, dude. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was stuff that would come out of my mouth, but it wouldn't put it on social media.
Right. It's like you're conscious before it got to your mouth.
Yeah, if you have a parody account, you sort of made it, man.
I guess.
I do want to ask before, because as far as Discovery of the Pocket, you've got a big speaking engagement tomorrow night.
Oh, yes.
Are you nervous at all about this?
I'm always nervous before, you always, whenever you're going into a speaking engagement, you never know what the questions are going to bring. You try to, I mean, the more of them I've done, I get excited for them more than anything. It's like a race. It's something you get excited for.
Yeah. So
a little bit of pressure, but
it's my buddy.
Mike Wright.
Yeah, Mike Wright up there at Rock River Multisport.
Yeah. It's a good group out there. I was out there last year, and I'm looking forward to going out there tomorrow. Hopefully, last year I showed up a half hour late because we got like 4 inches of snow, and it took me forever to get out there. I could have ridden my bike faster than I ended up driving out there last time.
Yeah, no kidding. No, I just remember because I sent up a T-shirt to give to you, and I don't know if you remember that or not, but he gave you a T-shirt for the Crushing Iron group, and I didn't know if that was where the bubbling happened or not.
It might have been. It might have been. I actually have the shirt. It's
use it to wash my car.
Would it be better than saying it's sitting in the bottom of some heap of laundry in the corner of a closet somewhere that I've never worn?
Yeah. No, we don't. Just be, straight up.
I use it. Yeah. I have it folded up. It's actually down here in the basement for when I go downstairs and I get out of like sweaty clothes and I'm going to stretch and I'm going to throw on something dry. I can pull on the C26 shirt.
Yeah. We're going to get you a hat. We got a bunch of new hats. I think. Do you like hats? Or are you a visor?
I prefer visors.
Well,
over
guess
hats.
What? We got a lot of visors too.
Yeah,
we were talked into it.
It's funny. People either like their hats or they like visors. There's not really an in between.
I've noticed that the visor crew is very passionate about their choice of visors over hats.
I wouldn't say I'm passionate. I just don't like something on top of my head. I can deal with the visor. It keeps the sun on my face, but that something on top of my head, I just don't like.
Well, it's hot. Maybe.
Well, I mean, you can put ice in it.
Yeah, but then
it
drips down into your shoes. I don't know, man. I haven't figured this stuff out. So, anyway, you want to take over here?
My head to my shoes is a long way.
Yeah, that's true. And you're going faster than I am, so it probably doesn't get in there.
I don't know.
I do want to know that before we get into other questions. What are you, 6'4", 6'3"?
6'2".
6'2".
74 inches.
74 inches. God.
Are you the biggest on the circuit? Biggest pro triathlete?
Matt Reed used to have that one hands down, and since Matt's not racing, I think Ann Potts is 6'2" also.
Anyway, it's time for you to take over, buddy. You had a few questions you wanted to ask us to get this thing cranking.
So, why a podcast?
Why a podcast? You want to go on that, Robbie? I mean, Robbie and I were, he coached me to my first Ironman 5 years ago, and then he had moved away to Kansas City. We never got to talk, so we're like, let's just start doing a podcast so we can talk a little bit. And that's kind of how it started, at least from my perspective. And I didn't have anybody to talk to triathlon about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the genesis behind starting the conversation of doing a podcast. And I guess we kind of figured, well, certainly we aren't like the only two people who feel like somewhat isolated in their training. And maybe if there's other people out there, they could, gain a connection in some way, shape, or form from how Mike and I were trying to connect via the podcast. And then it actually started, I think, kind of self-serving for us to just connect and communicate and have some kind of, even though it wasn't face-to-face, some kind of actual personal, like a phone conversation, which is a rarity these days. And then it just kind of steamrolled, and we've been going twice a week ever since. Gotcha.
Any huge sponsorships you guys gotten out of this? And everybody always asks me about my do I get sponsorships for doing stuff? I'm like, so I'm curious. Any big sponsorships you guys got out of this? Big sponsor deals?
Well,
crickets.
We've been kind of talking about that. Have we landed any big deals? No. We're curious about it, but we're also kind of just doing this and I don't know. That's not like, that hasn't been the main driver, but I think we're at the point now where we can kind of, enter that discussion with a little leverage, but I don't know. I mean, it would have to be right, man, I don't want to just like start slapping stuff on there. I mean, I suppose that's how you go about your sponsorships, right? I mean, you want to make sure it's a good fit. I mean, that's a huge part of it.
Correct.
And what, I mean, like, Orbea and who, I mean, what else you got going?
Well, right now it's sponsorship season. It was actually kind of eerie at the end of the year for me because most of the deals I sign are 3 and 2 year deals. Uh-huh. And last year, I must have had a really good year in 2011 because all of my contracts were up at the end of this year. So I had a bunch of 2 and 3 year deals, but this was year 6. So, I had nothing going into next year. And, at the beginning of this year, I really didn't care because I didn't think I was ever going to race at the top level of triathlon again. But this year I kind of surprised the heck out of myself and had multiple great races. And, so then here I am, stock on the rise already to hit the sponsorship world, and the market isn't the market's a scary market out there. I mean, USAT says triathlon's booming, but the companies out there are cringing, it seems like.
Really?
Yeah, I guess I never thought about and what you said as far as basically if you have a breakout year, you would be the equivalent of any other professional athlete who gets a contract, and now they're in, all your contracts come up to expire or end or renegotiate, and it's all of a sudden you've got, it's your contract year, and so you got to perform well or you might not get them all back. And I'm sure that's got to be somewhat stressful.
Not really. I mean, again, it's I put more stress on myself for racing well than I think anybody else does. Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, the sponsors, they want you to race well, because they're very well vested in you. But I mean, for at least at my end, nobody puts more pressure on me than myself. It's just the way it is. I'm just, I go out there for one reason, and that's to, fight to win and punish.
Yeah. Have you always been like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, give us a little bit of your background. I mean, I think as far back as I know, you used to work at Caterpillar. Is that correct, or did I just make that shit up?
Yes. No, okay. That's true. That's true. I worked just shy of 5 years at Caterpillar as an engineer, and it was kind of. I played in the whole professional triathlon thing. I started racing. I did my first pro race at the end of 2005. I raced Treasure Island Triathlon at the end of 2005. So 2006 was my first full pro season. And, it was one of those up and downs. And, my whole goal that season was to make it in the money. And I think I went 500 that season for, finishing in the money.
Gotcha.
Which, I mean, you look at it, and that's looking back at it, that was a pretty good season, especially in the races that I was doing. Since I was working full time, I really wasn't financially depending on it. I chose the most loaded races, the best races I could find. I wasn't, going out trying to make a living. I was going out to, if I'm going to go down, I want to go down to the best, So I was racing the whole Lifetime series, and and that's when guys like Greg Bennett and Andy Potts, Matt Reed, Stuart Hayes, Philip Osbally, the fields were just freaking loaded. And to have the opportunity to race those guys was absolutely just an awesome privilege, because they have, just even looking back at it, I remember one time at St. Anthony's, I got off the bike in the lead. I think I was about 20 seconds ahead of Greg Bennett and a couple other guys, Craig Alexander. Greg Bennett won the race. I overbiked that race by a little bit. And, I really fell apart the final 2 miles, and I ended up running a 37-minute 10K. So right at 6-minute pace. And I lost by 7 minutes and 8 seconds.
Wow. So okay,
I was in the lead starting the run.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good
starting the run, and I lose by 7 minutes, and I ran 6-minute pace. Granted, it was Olympic distance, but but that's
like, what does that do to your psyche, man?
Oh, that was a good bump. It was like, man, I got off the lead, off the bike in the lead. That's awesome. That's exciting, but to lose by 7 minutes after that, it's like, dang, man. So I think that was like 2000. That was one of the earlier races, but that was one of the first times where I really got that, hey, I could be competitive here. And and then I went on, and the first time where I really had that idea of leaving Caterpillar was at the end of 2008, where it became pretty real when I got off the bike at the lead to 70.3 Worlds when I was in Clearwater there. But that whole year I had been competitive race after race after race. And though I hadn't won a race yet, I had stopped being what I consider there's 3 levels of pros. There's your pretenders, which is kind of where all of us start when we enter the pro level. And then there's the fringe athletes, which are when you're a fringe athlete and you have a great day, you can mix it up with a contender that has a bad day. But if you have a normal day, you're mixing it up with the pretenders that have a great day. And I pretty much at that point was at the fringe level. And then when I left Caterpillar, and the first year I really didn't get the return that I thought I would of having all this extra time to rest and recover. Because really I didn't train that much more. I just had more time to rest and recover. But then it was really 2010, 2011, 2012 when I really started making the jumps and improvements. I think it took a year for my body to adjust of, the total lifestyle change.
Yeah. Now you had I know you had a strong swim background in high school, and then you played water polo at Purdue, right?
Yep.
And
that's correct.
Then what about the cycling part of it? You obviously rode a bike when you were a kid, but were you competitive, or did you get more competitive in college? And then, because you're getting off the bike like in some of your first races and so you must have had a pretty strong cycling thing going there. And then I'm also curious about like how you think about cycling, because I think I heard you say one point in a podcast or something about how you don't think of it as like a super hard activity, or I know you train hard and everything like that, but like you have an ease about it or something. Do you is that sort of a way you think about it? More like a spinning kind of cruise. Because sometimes it's easier to go fast, and there's this like cutoff in your mind sometimes, and I just want you to kind of talk about cycling a little bit in that regard when you started.
I've always loved riding my bike. I used to ride my bike to my friends' houses, which were, it's not like they were right next door. They were a mile or 2 or 2 miles, 3 miles away, so, but then that was like 10 years old, but I've always enjoyed riding a bike. And then I ended up having ridiculously long femurs, which are great levers for biking. It sucks having ridiculously long femurs for running, I can tell you that. So genetically, I'm a great cyclist and I'm a sucky runner. Right? I mean, just genetics by the way that the measurements of my body work out. That's the way it works out. Actually, Orca is awesome because they've worked with me to make actually longer pant legs for my race suits because my femurs are longer. It's fun because I mean, there's some race suits that I've had in the past that it kind of looks like I'm wearing some chick shorts, so. But when it comes to just thinking about the bike, I would say I have fun every time I get on the bike. I mean, it doesn't matter how hard the workout is; it's fun. I look forward to it, and I think anytime you have fun when you're doing something, it makes it a lot easier. Even when it's raining, it's snowing, it's good weather, it's bad weather. It's when you're having fun, it's just easier to do. You look forward to it, and if you don't want to do it, like sometimes when it comes for me, sometimes it's like running. It's like, oh, I got a long run today. It's it's kind of hard to push your. It's much harder to push your way through it than when it's something that you're looking forward to.
Man, I totally agree with that. So much about mentality and how much you just love something, and that's also a reason why so many age groupers hate and despise swimming, because they find it almost impossible to love. But I wanted to ask you a question about something you said earlier when you said you kind of have three levels of professionals. You have the fringe, I think, and then you said pretenders, and then I'm assuming the third would be contender.
Correct.
And I notice a lot of what you would say like the fringe level professionals, they tend to gravitate towards the races that are, fringe worthy races. And right. Do you feel like your choice, just from your competitive nature or how you're just wired, to even when you were a fringe, quote unquote, up and comer professional, to have finances, and prize purse, definitely in your thought process, but do you feel like just setting out and saying, I'm still going to mix it up with these actual contenders? Do you feel like that had a good impact, a great impact, or any kind of, on your future in the sport and how you were able to develop?
Yeah, I think it has a huge role. I mean, especially, somebody like me racing short course, I was racing 18 times a year or so. And I think I did one or two a year of the half Ironman distance up until I think 2007. So the first couple of years, I mean, it was 2011 was my first full. But up until that point, I was doing maybe two halves a year, and then the rest were all Olympic distance. Mm-hmm. And you look at that, how much race experience I got. And I mean, I raced ITU, I raced the Lifetime Series. I did, a lot of the races that even before 5150 took over all those races, but a lot of those super competitive Olympic distance non-draft races that used to be around. Mm-hmm. And I went there and I raced them. I did them all. And I mean, yeah, I had some great results. I remember I mixed it up with Macca at Memphis in May one year, which was, it was awesome because, Memphis in May was a time trial start. But mm-hmm. I mean, Macca and I ran together because he started like 30 seconds behind me. So he knew I wasn't going to beat him by 30 seconds. So I got to run I got to run 8K with Macca. Because nobody else was even competitive at that point in the race. But yeah. It's little things like that, and having all that race experience that I think have really helped me in my career, especially now. I look back at it and you look at somebody like Jordan Rapp. He's probably raced a third of the races that I have as a professional.
Yep.
And I think the guys that just really don't. You really don't get that race experience. I think it greatly affects you. And I think that is one reason that you see guys that are with an ITU background, when they do go to long course, they have they are so successful is because not for any other reason than that race experience.
Really?
Gotcha. When was the first time? It may have been that St. Anthony's race you talked about with Greg Bennett. I mean, I know St. Anthony's is still kind of big, but it used to be like the it was like the race. I think it's in like maybe March or April or something. And
yeah,
swim's always really tough, and it was like almost like a futures race. Like always had young up and comers. But when was like the first time you finished a race, whether it was winning or not, and you were like, yeah, I can actually get to the top of the contenders?
I mean, I don't know what if it was. I mean, that was one of those where it said light that I could be competitive. You know, I could be competitive. The first time I thought I could be a contender, I think was actually probably in 2011 when I was regularly, mixing it up with those guys. I would say 2011. So, I mean, it was a good 5 years before I would consider myself. And even, 2011, I would say, is where I went pretty much, was the year I was going from a fringe athlete to a contender. And, so I would say I spent at least, I spent 3-4 years, as I would say a pretender. I mean, I was that guy that at the back of the top 10, if you chose to look that far down the list. And, I still think some of it the only reason you might have heard of me is because, I was that guy that, was swim biker. So I was always up there. I got to rub shoulders. I mean, I couldn't imagine what it's like for somebody who does not come from a swim background who is racing at the professional level. Because, for me, I was able to see the race and see, that I was in the race. I'm in the race, and I just need to, everything was continuing still to improve. But, as everything continues to improve, I'm able to see, how I am relative to everyone else. Where, if you're coming out of the water 4 or 5 minutes back, I mean, how do you gauge improvement other than looking at the results sheet at the end of the day?
Huh.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Hey, can we talk a lot about Wisconsin on here because I'm from there and that was my first race, and it's just sort of a thing that we talk about a lot. Now, you did that this year, and I was up there and I saw you, and you rode over 25.5 miles an hour on that course. Is that the first time you've done that course?
No, I've been up there quite a few times. I actually that race was actually one of my worst Ironman bike rides I've ever had.
This one was?
Yes, it was.
Why was that?
I knew the course. Well, when you have little kids, they bring home like bugs that you don't have.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I was not feeling good the days leading into that race. I mean, but I gave it everything I had on the day. Inside it's like, hey, I kicked it. I mean, I got through. I'm not sick anymore. The day before the race, I was feeling better. But I mean, I raced everything I had, but the numbers showed it, unfortunately. And but I just knew the reason I rode so well was I knew that course. I'd gone up there. I trained with Blake Becker a couple times up there. I think we rode that course together 4 or 5 loops or 6 loops. And I knew it inside out. I'd done Barlow a whole bunch of times, a whole bunch of extra times, just figuring out, is it easier to spin up it, or is it easier to, give it a little extra kick?
And what'd you decide?
Oh, extra kick.
Really?
Yeah. You make that a 2-minute climb.
Oof.
Yeah. So I mean, is that like in your opinion in triathlon courses, is that a legit hill? Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like
in triathlon, any type of incline, it's like you go to races and it's like you see a hill and the road turns right. and you see another hill, the road turns left. I mean, it seems like in the sport of triathlon, they avoid hills at all costs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but they don't do it there. I mean, I really love that course.
I miss the old course. I really wish we would
I
have
agree with that,
been able
too.
to race the old course. I like Old Sauk and going up Timber Lane.
Yeah.
I think that is a much better course.
So you don't feel like that was a good ride? Is that what you're telling me this year?
Wattage-wise, it was way down from where I wanted to be. But since I knew the course so well, I knew where I needed to dole out and since I wasn't feeling great, where I could save some and still maintain speed. And the wind, I think, was out of the southwest that day.
I can't remember.
Whichever way the wind was, it was exactly the way I had ridden it. One of the days that I had ridden was up there. So, and because when the wind's out of different directions, it very much changes that course, and the difficulty of it. And I think it was out of the southwest, and I remember, just since I had ridden it in those conditions, I knew that, riding a decent time trial on the highway on our way out to the hilly part pays huge dividends.
Because you tailwind versus knowing when you're going to get a headwind and vice versa for the remainder of the ride.
Yeah.
So you're you dig into that then, is what you're telling me, pretty hard.
I did for Wisconsin, because I had the opportunity to do it. I mean, most of the time I don't have opportunities to go and preview the course, but I mean it's an hour and 40-minute drive to the course, so I can go out there and do it, and do it lots.
On a course like that, I would say it's definitely for triathlon one of the more technical courses. From a good bike handler who knows the course and knows how to take the turns in the hills versus one who has poor handling skills, on that kind of course, how many minutes are we talking somebody's going to lose? Because I feel like it could be substantial, like at least 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
if not more.
There's a lot of small things on that course which really get exposed, because that course really tests every part of your bike handling. I mean, your ability to climb in the saddle, your ability to climb out of the saddle, holding a arrow position, because there are parts that are long, straight, and fast, and then there are a lot of turns. And, I guess no matter how many times I would go through a turn in training, you never account for how they're going to cone the corner on race day. Like over by the Pancake House there, what mile is that? Towards the end of the loop, you know what I'm talking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They
cone it to a 90-degree turn. It's like, this is a nice soft turn, and you're making it impossible on me. And it's like off camber too, so it's like you turn left, but the road's tilting right because the main flow, you're coming basically onto a side street that comes in, but it's a soft turn. But when they tone it to a 90 degrees, it makes it a little more challenging. But it tests everything of it. I mean, all in all, with all those turns, and I would say less the bike handling. I would say just knowing the course and which corners you actually have to brake for, because I mean, I feel like there's a whole bunch of times you're going into areas that are kind of blind and you don't know, is this a 90-degree turn or is this like not really a 90-degree turn?
Yeah.
With all that, I think, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm. What was your top speed on that course? Do you remember?
No idea.
Okay. All right, let's go to let's get into Louisville a little bit, because that was a great race. I was up there. We were both up there for that one, of course, and frankly, I think that was about the 4th time you've beat me head-to-head.
Really?
Yeah. Muncie a couple times. I think at Rev 3 Knoxville. I think you were over there, right, before?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And now this.
I love that race.
Yeah, me too.
I love that race. I just never seem to have luck there.
Oh, well.
I loved that course.
That's where I kind of, I guess, excel on you, because I have good luck over there. I have podiumed there, my friend.
Yeah, you get a free case of power bars.
I did, and I will not let that die.
That's probably what put him under.
But anyway, so Louisville.
Yeah, where were you? I thought we were going head to head there.
Well, you didn't see me? I got
out of the water. I got out of the water and I was by myself.
Yeah, right. Well, that's because I got all screwed up with the new time trial start. I didn't know how to handle it. So I started way behind you, first of all.
Oh, okay.
And
well, what did you want to handicap yourself?
Well, I thought I was making a smart move on the wind, but it was an absolute nightmare. The wind actually picked up on the bike for me, I think.
The wind picked up for everybody throughout the day.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. No, I mean, I do remember seeing you. You passed me just after LaGrange on your second loop, and I was on my first loop, unfortunately, and that's when I kind of threw in the towel.
When you went a lap down?
Yeah.
When you went a lap down. That's the standard rule. When you get lapped, you concede.
Yeah, I just started chowing on power bars at that point.
Yeah. So going into Louisville, you had, I mean, it seemed like, and I'm probably going to be wrong on this, it seemed like you were almost kind of racing into really, really, really good shape going into Louisville. Did you think or have any kind of thoughts that it may turn out the way it did? And like, what were your thoughts on arriving in Louisville, and then what did, and then what you hoped transpired that day?
I mean, just looking at the field, I mean, you're looking at how Marcel Clavel was racing. I mean, he just came off sixth at Worlds, at 70.3 Worlds. He was, he was like third or fourth at Roth. Mm-hmm. And, he's a young kid that was just racing out of his gourd. And you're looking at that, it's like, dude, this is going to be a race for him. I mean, he was my number one. I would say he was my number one competitor. And then outside of that, when you have Eric Limkeman in the field, I mean, it always seems that Eric can pop off a race every once in a while that's just phenomenal. And I've been victim to quite a few of those, where he just all of a sudden has that day where he puts a swim bike and run together. That's, where did that come from, Eric? Jeez. I mean, he's a good friend of mine, and we've been doing it together for years, but it's like every once in a while he just gets that race where he puts it all together. And then the rest of the field, I mean, there was a bunch of guys that were strong. But I mean, I figured, I knew that if racing is where my fitness was, that I could handle them if I had a good to a great day. And I mean, we just got there in the swim, and I don't know if you guys saw when they started us pros in the morning.
It was dark,
pitch black.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah, it was pitch black.
We're like sitting there in the water, and they're like, they're really going to start us? I'm like, and I just looked, I don't know who was sitting next to me. I said, I'm just aiming for those lights way up there.
Yep.
And I was swimming, and so there was that end buoy where we turn around, and I was like, I didn't realize that was a turnaround buoy, and I'm like 30 meters off, and then all of a sudden they're like pointing me, there's the turn buoy. I'm like, I see that. They're like, no, that's a turnaround. I'm like, oh. And because, I mean, none of us had a freaking clue where we were going. I mean, there was
even
a couple
to that
guys.
Point? It wasn't light yet?
It was still pitch black.
It probably only took you like 7 or 8 minutes to get to it.
Yeah, we were there pretty quick. And then when you turned around, everybody thought you'd go faster, and you actually went slower because we had a nice surface current due to the wind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that was real.
Hey. Oh yeah. Yeah. That surface current was. That surface current was. It was. I mean, I don't mind it. I'm used to swimming in lakes, so it gave you that little lake chop, and it kept smacking you in the mouth every time you tried to breathe. Which I don't mind. I'm used to that. But it seems that a lot of people really get affected by it. I guess most people don't like choking on water.
It makes sighting a little more difficult too, but of course it was dark, so that makes sighting tricky too.
Yeah, I guess that's why waterboarding's so effective. People don't like choking on water. Yeah, but I got out of the water, and I was shocked that, I mean, I got around the first buoy, and there was one guy right on my feet, and there was a small gap and 2 more guys, and I'm like, okay, this is screwed up. I mean, I'm usually a guy that's, nestled in the lead pack. I'm not the guy pulling the pack, but I think just with it being dark, everybody just had you couldn't find anybody else.
Yeah.
Like literally, you couldn't see. And I feel bad. There were a bunch of guys that had like sunshine tinted glasses or goggles, and I went with clear goggles. And I'm like, man, if you had, I mean, just with the few shades that would have made it darker, you couldn't see anything. I mean, I swam into kayaks that first lane. Like they couldn't see us, you can see them. It was a mess. But once I got around that out into the open river, there was no more of that. It really opened up, and I mean, just got out of the water, and then I got out transitioned by a couple of guys, but got on the bike, and I think by mile, but I think Clavel was one of the guys in the lead pack, and then he led the bike until about mile 5, and then he chased me until I think about mile 30 of the bike, and then the rest is history.
Yeah.
When did you? Well, before we get to that part, what is it like for a guy going like 27, 28, whatever miles an hour? What's it like going on that second loop or any loop course like Wisconsin's the same? What is it like going past triathletes who look more like they're on a sailboat going east and west at those speeds, and how maybe not nerve-wracking because you do it so much, but it's got to be somewhere in your mind, or at least it would be mine, like this is where somebody else could affect this, how great my day is, just from the mere fact they could like swerve out to the left for just no other reason than just they're going to.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. It's freaking terrifying. The first loop at Louisville was head down, hammering. I mean, barely let off the gas. And that second loop, man, it's heads up. But I got to say, Wisconsin was a lot worse than Louisville. Wisconsin. It just seemed everybody was like 25 wide. Texas, actually, of the races, it's just everybody on the hill. It seems like everybody, when they're climbing, everybody slows down. It seems like to the same pace.
Yeah.
And nobody's really going forward or backwards very quick. Until you get that guy pushing his bike up in the middle of the road, and then everybody's swerving left.
Is Wisconsin always that way?
I don't know. It's the first time I've done
that
it.
was the first time. Okay, you ridden the course, but because we had we had a long discussion once about the changing the mass start to wave starts, and we thought that would.
I liked it. I liked the way that worked out. Because I feel that I just feel that it was due to the road conditions is why they stacked up at that course rather than the wave start. No, I like the wave start because it still brings an element of what Ironman triathlon's all about with that mass start. I think that's one of the mystiques of the race, and I think that with the time trial start you kind of lose that mystique and it takes away racing. I mean, not having the wave start, not having your whole age group start together, it takes away that mystique of racing. It's it's doing a time trial. Who really, of all the stages in the tour, do you enjoy watching the time trial or do you enjoy watching a road race?
Road race.
You enjoy watching the road race.
So you like the wave start or you like the mass start?
I like the mass start or the wave start, where your whole age group starts together.
Okay.
So I mean, it'd be
actually
like
a race,
right? Exactly, and that's one of the things right now that is we're in a sport that's in flux, and it needs it needs to be shiprighted and back to growing rather than in stagnation. It's little things like that of the element of racing needs to be there, and not just this thing of a time trial.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%. It's really nice. That's why I always like Wisconsin, because not only that, you're racing everybody at once, and your time is your time when you cross the line.
Right.
But so you've gone through a great year. It's turning into a really nice, as you call, comeback, and you want to. I want to get into a little bit of what you do for recovery in general, or you said, once you quit your job, you had more time to recover and everything. But what does that mean to you? What does recovery? I mean, how often do you ride? And I mean, how often how do you look at it in general?
Sleep. That's the best way to recover.
Okay.
Sleep. 8 hours. 8 hours minimum a night of sleep. And a good hour nap during the day. Maybe if you can squeeze in an additional 20-minute nap, that's always good. But sleep is what helps the body recover. I mean, like when I start getting sick, like if I get sick, I don't try to train. I just shut down everything for a day or two and sleep, and I get rid of it real quick. Instead of being sick for 6-7 days, like my wife will get sick for 6 or 7 days, I'll get the same thing. I'll be healthy in 2 days because I'll sleep it off, and I'll sleep it off and be healthy within a day or two, and then I can resume normal training instead of dragging an illness out 5, 6, 7, 8 days and just making a mediocre at best training, because we all suck at training no matter how good we think we are when we're sick.
Now, when you feel something coming on like that, will you take a total day off or just keep things light with no hard efforts?
Rest.
Thank you. I like what I'm hearing.
You just shut it down, man. You just start sleeping for 2 straight days. Is that kind of?
I'll sleep I either got food poisoning or stomach flu, not last night, but the night before, and pretty much I think I was out of bed maybe 2 hours yesterday.
Wow.
And the rest of that I was sleeping.
Do you do massages and
yes.
warm-ups and stretching or any of that kind of stuff? Do you get into that?
I do stretch. I do stretch. I do some yoga. For yoga, it's maybe 1 day a week I'll do an hour. And I get a massage probably once or twice a month. Yeah, about during the season I'd say it's once a month. Do a lot of core, tons of core. I think core strengthening is one of the most underrated parts of triathlon. I think that's something that I've held on to over the years that has always helped me.
Interesting.
I think it probably saved my life 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
What? I had 2 questions. One, what was it like? Was your wife and kids there at Louisville with you?
No.
Okay.
No. I had one of my coaches there.
Gotcha. What was it like for you? I mean, I could imagine just seeing the pictures and the video of your face. What was that like?
What, Louisville?
Yeah, coming down the red carpet, knowing that you had won, and that
I think it took me the longest to do the final 0.2 of a mile of anybody in that field.
Yeah, we have that on video.
It's people are people always race to the end, and it's funny, they look at it looks like at the end you were dying, because I think I was on pace for a 3:04 or 3:0. I think it was a 3:02 marathon pace at mile 23, and I ended up running a 3:08, I think. But no, it's you get to the end. There's at that point I knew that there was nobody within a good period of time, and these things don't happen very often. Half Ironman, there's a little bit more of a rush to get to the line. You can slow down a little, but the margins are usually much closer. But for Ironman like that, it's something special. And it's really cool. I still remember walking up to the finish line, and once you get into 4th Street Live there, you got that huge American flag.
Yep.
And it was just awesome, just looking up at that, being like, wow, this is perfect.
Yeah, that was cool, man. And you came back out and walked back up and down the chute. I thought that was awesome too.
I really needed a few minutes to kind of compose myself. I really don't want to have to give a interview to the whole world when I am right after you finish 8 hours of your heart in your throat. It's like, could you imagine right after you finish somebody putting a microphone in your mouth? So how do you feel?
Yeah.
But, give me a few minutes here.
Yeah.
So,
have you ever had a race to the wire?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few.
I mean, like at a full or a half,
at a half.
Yeah.
At multiple halves, yeah. I had the famous one with me and Tim O'Donnell at Eagleman a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That one was awesome. He tried me a whole bunch. He tried me a whole bunch of times, and literally it was like that moment where you are about to concede, and all of a sudden he lets up, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I might be able to stay with him. I might be able to do it. I might be able to do it." And then all of a sudden he goes again, and it's like, God, no. And then right as you were about to break, he slows up again, and you're like, thank God.
That is incredible.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask is, why do you, in your opinion, as from the professional ranks, obviously, do you feel that triathlon or the participation has become kind of stagnant or flatlined? And if you had any, if you had the opportunity, what are some things you could or would change?
I always challenge, now I would have done this later in the podcast, but, I always challenge, I have 3 major challenges for, all your listeners and the first challenge I have for them is to look around at who supports the sport, who sponsors the pros they like, who does that, and support the companies that support the sport. I think, that's always important. And then I think my favorite one always is saying, find somebody who does some sort of sport that's always active, and get them to do a triathlon. Get them interested in doing a triathlon. Because I can get 500 people to do it. We can't get 500 people to do it, but if those 500 people at, let's say your local race, if all of them get one person to join triathlon next year, you've doubled the size of that race.
Yeah. So,
that's my challenge is get somebody that's not currently in triathlon, maybe somebody who's, maybe does a bunch of 5Ks, or one of your, we all have friends that are active that just don't do triathlon. Hey, come on, let's do triathlon. Hey, I'll do a triathlon with you. You want to do a sprint race? Sure, I'll do sprint race. But, maybe it's somebody you really don't like. After we know how much an Ironman hurts, maybe you want somebody you don't like, that, hey, you should try this. It's freaking great. And trust me, you'll do one, and then you'll want to do another and another and another. But, it's, I hold myself to the same standard, and every year I always challenge myself to get 1 or 2 people involved. And last year I got my mom back racing because she used to race regularly. So actually 2 years ago I got my mom back racing, and I got my next door neighbor to do one. He does the Dopey Challenge, which is coming up next month, so he's all nervous.
January.
Yeah, that's you want to talk about stupid.
Yeah, those people are, they have a couple screws loose. What is it, 5K, 10K, half, full, 4 days in a row?
Correct.
Yep.
Wow, what? Okay.
Idiots, yeah. I've got a few people.
Yeah, well, that's cool you say that, man. I think that's kind of at the gist of really what we do and our podcast. We see it all the time, people bringing their friends in, and I think that the organic spreading of the word throughout our group and everything has been awesome, and more people getting into it all the time. And I think that's really sort of at the core too of why we do it. So we really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it's something we need to do in order to to grow the sport, because I think I know triathlon can be great. It has been for years, but it's just, you look at right now, you look at the top professionals in the sport, and right now we have a few young kids like Ben Canute that are phenomenal. And I've raced Ben I've raced Ben before. I actually raced. I think I was in my early 20s, and he was like 16 or something.
Oh wow!
And he beat me in a finish line sprint. Wow. In a short course race. But it was just like, here I am. I'm a pretender pro, and I got beat by this young kid. Well, he ends up being an Olympian, and both of us turned out all right. Yep. But you just kind of look at it. But if you look from you look at the sport right now, you have Jared Shoemaker, myself, Jordan Rapp, TJ Tollickson, Kevin Collington. I mean, all of us are out of the same age range. Mm-hmm. And then you look behind us, there's 5 or 8 years of nobody.
Nothing.
And you kind of look at that, and personally, I kind of blame that on the governing body. I mean, how does that happen? Mm-hmm. You can't blame it on. I mean, what do you blame it on? You can't blame it on anything but the people overseeing the sport. And for 5-8 years, there's a group of people there that must have just been riding the high tide and not trying to grow the sport. And I think and it's happened in triathlon before. But it happened in the early 90s. If you're a triathlon geek and you look at this history, the sport really grew, and then it kind of plateaued and did a little dip. And then it boomed again in the late 90s when it got announced it was going to be an Olympic sport. And then all the way through the early 2000s when Ironman really took off. And I think we could get back to that exponential growth very easily. But, it's just having the right people in the right places to really push and make that growth possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think so many people can look at it as kind of like a selfish sport, because it's not a team sport. Technically it's not. It's and it can be a very selfish and isolating sport. So it often doesn't lend itself to, like you said, inviting other people, and people can become like, I think we talked about in a previous podcast, like the T2 for a lot of people is like this weird introvert convention, because nobody likes to talk to other people and be opening and welcome. But if we truly want the sport to grow and you want to put more money into it and be able to do more things, then you got to have more people. And I think that's super vital. And what do you got on tap for 2018, or have you even thought about it yet?
2018 is going to be my return to Kona. So I'm looking forward to that. I've been there twice, and neither time I had a day which I would even want to talk about. I could talk about my 10 worst races, and both of them have Kona in that top 10 list. So, or on that worst 10 list. So I need to right that ship for sure. But there's I'll be back at Steelhead, just working backwards. I'll do Kona, and then before Kona will be Steelhead. And then I'll probably race the race in June. Racine's gone out of July. So, that's
go back to Eagle Man.
I thought about it. But then in the spring, I think I'm definitely going to do both Texas races, the 70.3 and the full. I don't need to race a full, but I love to race, man. I'm not a person that's about the journey. I don't per se love the journey. I love the results. I love racing. I'm just I live for that pedal to the metal, heart in your throat, praying that it don't all fall apart before you hit that finish line.
Now, with that in mind, with Kona in mind, are you going to put more focus on Kona, or are you just kind of going to do what you do?
Realistically, you and I, we all know we're human. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, whether it be injury, sickness, there's so many things that we can't control. I mean, am I going to put myself in the best position I can to be successful at Kona? Yes. But am I going to put every egg in one basket? I just don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah. It's been, what, 3 years since you've done Kona? Is that correct?
2014.
2014, okay. So, I mean, you don't seem like a guy that needs to be caught up in race dynamics, since you're pretty much by yourself for the majority of most races. Was there anything that stuck out to you, and if you watched any of the coverage or followed online this year or last year, about the dynamics on the bike, or just the whole race that stuck out to you, that you thought were different, or that are kind of things changing as the years come?
This year I didn't watch any of the Kona coverage at all because I was with you guys in Louisville.
Day before Louisville,
and I was actually just, honestly, I was combing that bike course. I was looking at every crack, every bridge seam, everything out on that course. Seeing where I can squeeze a second out or where I need to concede a second just to, ensure longevity. I knew that, what's that narrow 1-lane road?
Oh God, that short little like lollipop loop. What is it? Over
the one lane road. Yeah, on the end of the lollipop there.
Yeah, it's like yellow. The pavement is there. I can't remember what it's called. I know what you're talking about.
Schoolhouse Road or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I was over there pretty much combing the course. I'm driving like 3 miles an hour, just like, okay.
Nice.
Where's the best strip of pavement to take on this?
Wow, man.
I mean,
the driveways.
You look at like, just take a normal road. They want you to ride on the right, on the shoulder. Okay? The surface roughness of the shoulder compared to the white line versus the rut where the cars drive, you're looking at 3 totally different speeds. You ride on a rough road versus a perfectly smooth piece of asphalt, you're looking at, it could be a mile an hour plus difference. So if you can figure out just where to ride, it makes a huge difference. And granted, most of the time we race, we really don't have much of a choice.
Yeah.
Because, we're passing people. On 2-loop courses, I mean, at Texas this year, Texas was crazy. Because, I mean, you had crosswind, headwind, tailwind. I mean, the wind just changed the whole entire race. But, I mean, at Texas, you had crosswind, and you had people that would move over like 3 feet every time you had the wind. So you're like giving them their space, and then all of a sudden they move over 3 feet, and you're holding your breath and praying. But, you really don't get to choose your line as much as you think on the second loop. But on the first loop, yeah, you definitely get to pick exactly where you want to be, but more often I look where I don't want to be. And that, like you guys just mentioned, driveways. I mean, people always, especially down in Kentucky, have gravel drive race, which, I mean, it's most of the world has gravel drive race. And, they drag a little bit of gravel out there, and one stone ends your day or changes your day real quick.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. Well, I think we can wrap it up here. We really appreciate it, man.
Anytime.
Anytime. And that's cool, man. We wish you the best of luck this year. We'll probably have you back on. And also, if you want to come down to one of our camps, I think that would be cool. Got a place
when do you guys
stay?
Have camps?
April, June, and August.
Where in?
In Nashville.
Nashville, where in?
You can ride on the Natchez Trace Parkway, which I believe you've done before.
Oh, I've done.
You've done the point to point, right? Maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think I remember seeing that.
No, I did it last year. I did it 2 years or 3 years ago. I'm probably gonna do it a couple times this year. So. Yeah,
man. If it works out, you can crash here, and we got a bunch of people coming in. I'm in Nashville.
Where are you guys at?
East Nashville.
And I'm out in Hermitage, close to the lake. So
we swim out at Percy Lake, and we do some cool run activity, but the bike stuff out at the Trace. So
Yeah.
If you just want to do part of that or whatever.
Yeah, or you could set the record. Well, we work out too at this abandoned airfield.
Oh yeah, we have an abandoned airport.
You'd probably take off actually, going so fast, but
it's a mile smooth loop. We just ride out there.
Nice.
It's it's actually really awesome. I mean, for training, it's super windy, and nobody's out there, and there's no cars obviously, and it's just great. So there's a lot of stuff. Anyway,
Sounds good. Well,
all right, we'll go get some rest, buddy.
Maybe we'll catch up, you guys, and I'll keep you guys posted for sure.
Sounds good. Thanks again, Andrew.
All right, man. See you later.
Guys have a great day.
All right,
See
you too.
Bye.
Bye.